Hello, everyone. Really wanted to make this video for posterity, really, about a magnificent pineal experience. Just finished Orlando Retreat 2024. This is my third retreat, 1713, another seven. And I can't recommend retreats enough to anyone. There's such a microcosm of life. You can have a whole life of learning in a retreat. There's such an evolution of being, the interaction with people, the synchronicities that happen, the teaching that happens. If you're seeking to grow and to learn, you're going to get that, and you're going to get lessons that teach you as you go along. So, going back to my first retreat in Dallas, I was a mad scientist and my own lab rat obsessed with the pineal gland for months before my first retreat. Um, I had been practicing doing pineal meditations all the time, having my own custom pineal meditations with rounds of breath, extended lay down times. Um, when I got to that retreat, I learned from Dr. Joe that I had been trying too hard, um, that I'd been really going after it. You know, the little kid in us wants the mystical experience as much as we want spiritual pursuit. So when I got to that retreat and we finally get to the pineal uh, day, it was really interesting because I had been practicing the pineal meditations and the breathing so much. And during that retreat, people around me were having experiences with the pineal, and I just wasn't. And a part of me thought, what a jip, because everyone I talked to who was experienced and had already been to retreats said that it was unusual how much time I had put in with three meditations a day and practicing as I did. So when we finally got to that day, I said to myself, you know what? It's just not going to happen this retreat. Just let it go and maybe it'll happen in the future. So we get into the long pineal meditation, and Dr. Joe, he's like a brilliant conductor of a symphony of energy. It's just bringing it up and up and up in the way he does. And at one point, it's like my pineal gland threw up. And it wasn't this nice white, milky white substance like he describes. For me, it was a putrid inner smell. And yet it was delicious at the same time. Like, more, please. And I had a visual experience during that. I mean, I had a really powerful experience. Um, And what's so interesting about it is that all this time I thought I was, the little kid wanted to see something amazing, have the mystical experience. What I learned at that moment is that the visual experience is just, as I've said before, it's just the icing on the cake. It's an amazing thing, but it was what I felt and experienced during that moment that was the meat and potatoes of the thing. So what happened for me is my eyes are closed, blindfolds on, we're lying down, and it's as if my inner vision opened up, as if my eyes were wide open under the mask, and I was in a room, like the ceiling lowered. And on this ceiling, there was this floral pattern. It was just going whoosh, whoosh of these, like a plant life spreading out. And I realized in that moment that I know how this will sound unless people have a frame of reference, but I kind of have to get over that now because I'm really making this video for fellow people in the community. I've already learned how crazy I sound to people in my life outside of these retreats, but whatever. I've gained a tribe. So I realized that this plant life was love itself expressing itself. It was speaking to me somehow, showing me that it was love, kind of like God giving me a kiss on the cheek. So that lasted for maybe 15 seconds. But in that 15 seconds was all of eternity. So that stops, excuse me. So that was kind of the high point for Dallas. Now, in this experience, things went further, like quantum levels further up the ladder. I really learned this experience that there is guidance. I don't know what you call it, God, spirit, a guide, someone or something helps and guides. And many people have had this experience, and you have these conversations. Like on the first experience in Dallas, when my pineal gland started, first it started vibrating madly, and I realized at that moment it almost sounded like a didgeridoo while it was vibrating. And at that moment, didgeridoo sounds come on the speaker, and that Jew's harp like wow wow wow. And I realized at that moment that there's a method to the madness, that the pineal gland vibrates in frequency to this music and bathes in the frequency of the music. And for a moment, it was terrifying. We all think, we all want to seek God and find the mystical, but then when we find it, it's a scary thing. But something inside said, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And when I did that, that experience happened. So in this one, I felt like the guidance was even more. This was fascinating. So the first 2 days of this retreat were like an advanced retreat. I was stunned. Dr. Joe went long, hard, and heavy in the initial retreats. These were not for sissy meditations. They were long. And it's so interesting how when something magical happens, when everybody feels love in the room, um, people talk about it. Lots of people have experiences. Then there's other meditations that just, how do you describe it? They're just the doing the work meditations, where nobody really has, I mean, most people, you don't hear a lot of mystical experiences or special experiences. And then you hear a lot of people saying things like, oh, that meditation wasn't really happening. I even had one guy say that was a dull meditation. But it really is true, as so many of us know and have experienced, that like Dr. Joe says, there's no such thing as a bad meditation. You're doing the work. And I think of it as the really special ones are like pillars of a bridge, but there have to be spans in between the pillars. Not every one is going to be magical or mystical. And yet, in a bigger picture, they all are, because they're all connecting and working together. So that is kind of a microcosm to what happened to me in this pineal meditation. Dr. Joe just kept us in the space of six, energy center six of the pineal for a long time. And as I laid there, I think, you know, maybe this one just isn't happening. And once again, my mind said to me, you know what? Dr. Joe knows what he's doing. I'm just going to let go and trust. And whatever happens, happens. And sure enough, of course, as soon as I let go, things start getting really interesting. The room returns, the ceiling lowers, except this time, on the ceiling, I start seeing the same floral pattern, almost like I'm looking at an LCD screen, and I'm seeing different floral patterns, but they're happening in chaos. A little bit here, a little bit here. I can't really focus. Something internally, maybe it's a cooperation. I don't think this was just my impulses. Powerful, powerful word comes into my psyche and just says, order. And at that moment, order, coherence, my mind let go. And at that moment, the whole screen became perfectly clear. And the floral patterns were just moving and moving. And I was able to lay there for a long, long time to my heart's content, just staring at these beautiful uh, floral patterns. So eventually, this is so funny. Eventually, I was there for so long that I said to myself, I get the distinct impression that this is the waiting room of something bigger, like it's the beginner's lounge. And and then it said in my head, AKA the veil. And at that moment, I thought we were in the end of the meditation and the lie down part, and that was it. At that moment, Dr. Joe says, sit up, and he starts leading us into this intense bonus round of Pineal. One of the first things he says is, now it's time to go beyond the veil. Can't make this stuff up. And so I'm I'm sitting there and I kind of he's bringing up the energy, and I've never been one of these people who was so good at bringing up breath that there was any kind of shaking or anything like that. But I really learned a lot about the breath. I asked people and I was sort of ready for another education, and it was on this one I needed to learn about letting go. I had been the mad scientist, like a type A personality pursuing the mechanics. This retreat, I learned let more feminine energy, feel more, let it go. And I forgot to mention, because this is really important, in the Dallas retreat, when the shit started hitting the fan with the pineal, as I was going after it, suddenly my pineal said to me, let's have fun. And this big grin came on my face. And instead of terror, everything turned into intense pleasure. Let's have fun. And so that happened again on this one. Throughout the retreat, I went from bringing the energy up to six, then I was bringing it almost up and out of me to the point where it was like tossing a baby, playing with a baby in the air, like up the baby, up the baby. And all this time I had been hearing about passion and intention being so important for the breath. This time I want it. I want it. I really want that energy. Careful what you wish for in the best way, because as we're at this moment in this bonus round, all of a sudden my hands are stuck together like I'm being electrocuted. I can't separate them. The sound of the music is going, and once again, the energy just kind of explodes. He puts us back down on the ground, and now the I see the veil there, the room again, but now it just sort of dissipates, and I am cognizant of an entire other realm. I can't see anything else, but there was just sort of bluish purple, like seeing the periphery of another galaxy. And at that moment, the inner voice says, "Baby steps." And just I go into this very calm bliss. This was what was going to happen for today. Super fascinating. We then do the body electric lie down the next day. God, I really, really hesitate to say this, knowing that some friends and family might have thought I was nuts the last time. I'm going to have to keep an eye over my shoulder for men in white coats and a net coming to get me. But I'm in the blessing the energy meditation, and it's pretty crazy. I've gotten to the point where I'm so adept at activating the pineal gland. Sometimes when that pineal gland is activating and I come to some sort of spiritual revelation or some important thought, the vibration moves down my body. It comes out my hands, my feet. Sometimes I feel center one and center six activating, like they're the big points of energy, with the energy running. So it's not something Dr. Joe says. We really are and can become the body electric. We activate the body electric. So the guide is there with me again. So the shit's hitting the fan again, energetically. And I, in my behind my mask, I go looking around for the ceiling again. And I was like, oh, cool, I can just do this whenever. And the ceiling starts to materialize. At that moment, the voice says to me, I thought you wanted to see beyond the veil. And he says, let this go. And so I just let that go and I sunk into a much deeper level of consciousness, of sleep, however you want to call it. And I can't say for sure what happened. you know, Dr. Joe talks about the pineal gland and time travel. Um, I shouldn't have even air quoted because it's a real thing. Obviously, it's just hard to talk about, especially if you're new to all this. But I went to a memory from 25 years ago, and it was just like I was awake in the memory, fully like a lucid dream, fully awake and conscious of what I was witnessing. And then at that moment, I was just floating very slowly and steadily, and I had a view like I was the helicopter view from above, and I could see down. I'm looking through this viewfinder. What am I looking at? It looked like I thought I was having a pleasant lucid dream about flying over the tops of buildings in New York City. But then I said, what am I looking at? And at that moment, everything became crystal clear. And I'm floating over the armchairs and the tables in the empty atrium next to the ballroom. I know how that sounds. Did I leave my body? I don't know for sure, but it's like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. And at that moment, I said to myself, have I left my body? And at that moment, boom, I come slamming back into my body and fully conscious and open my eyes under the mask. I don't know. I won't say that I'm sure that happened. I've heard people talk about these things, but I thought that's not going to happen to me. I'm not one of these people who leaves their body. And I always thought it would be like, oh, you're Casper the Friendly Ghost flying around. But I feel like perhaps this was a beginner's uh, thing. Um, I guess I will know in the future if that's what happened. I guess that's enough for now. Thank you.